Okay, now, let's see what we got here. Are we recording on that? Okay. And, are we recording on this? Yes, we are. Okay, we're recording. So, in thinking about what I wanted to talk about today, I'm going to talk about the 5 reasons stuff happens. It's called the 5 niyamas. And this time of year, a lot of stuff is happening. People change jobs, people change addresses, people change spouses, people are changing a lot of stuff because the new year is coming and they either want a fresh start, a new start, or to do something else. So, and on top of all that, a lot of people die this time of year. You know, Christmas and New Year's, a lot of people are dying. And how the heck do you make sense of that? You know, there's a minister in Thousand Oaks who just lost his daughter, who started at UCLA. And she was in a terrible car accident, and she died a week later. And how do you even put words to that? You know, it's just unbelievable. So if you're a Christian, you may look to the heavens and blame God or pray to God that everything will be okay. But as a Buddhist, we don't really have that as an option unless we want to. So our option is to try to understand why stuff happens in our life and who do we get to blame. Because blaming is important for humans. So the first reason stuff happens is universal cause and consequence. Now, we just had an earthquake in Alaska, you know, and so when earthquakes happen, sometimes there's a tsunami or a storm surge. We have hurricanes, property is lost, life is lost, and who do you blame? Well, the thing I like about Buddhism is in the universal cause and consequence of things, there's no intent. You know, the universe did not intend to cause humans to suffer more than they already are. It's just things came into being, circumstances arose, platelets shifted, and we had an earthquake. And now we got to figure out, well, okay, I can't blame anybody because that's the nature of living on this planet. I just bought a DVD of the National Geographic series called Mars. And I love Mars. And I would go to Mars if I could. And I would die on Mars. Just to have a little, you know, tombstone. He died on Mars. And the thing I like about this series is it's scientifically based, and there's a bunch of talking heads, scientists explaining the next scene and why the next scene is the way it is. So you have the drama and you have the science. And there's nothing on Mars to support human life. Mars does not care if we're there. Our home planet, Earth, has oxygen and food and water. And we can make shelter out of caves and under trees, and so we can sustain our life without too much effort as compared to living on Mars where you have to bring your environment with you. And if you step outside that environment, you're a goner. Do you blame Mars for being ruthless in the way it treats humans? Well, no, you can't. It's just that's what it is, and if you want to go there, you need to be prepared. And if you live on Earth and you want to stay here, you need to be prepared. So when I go to the Angeles National Forest, I'm always on the lookout for widowmakers. And if you don't know what a widowmaker is, it's when a branch at the top of the tree falls off, hits you in the head, and kills you. That's called a widowmaker. But besides widowmakers in Angeles National Forest, you have snakes and spiders, and maybe some coyotes, and mountain lions, and maybe a bear or two, and all those things wouldn't mind killing you because it doesn't really care if you exist or not. So to stay alive as a human being, we need to be aware that most things, if they have the opportunity, will kill us. And we need to be smart enough to avoid that. We need to maybe walk in a different neighborhood, maybe be in a car, maybe say the prayers every morning so we can stay alive. But that's the universe, and that's how the universe works. So number one, the reason stuff happens is because sometimes there's a universal cause and consequence with no intention behind it that will ruin our life. Number two, the second reason stuff happens to human beings is genes and chromosomes, our biology. We are predisposed to go in a certain direction because of our genetics. And sometimes people get terrible diseases because of their genes and chromosomes. Nothing to do with the external environment. It was just sort of pre-planned that that would happen to you. And of course, it always takes the people by surprise. How could it happen to me? Well, it was programmed to happen to you. Thankfully, most people have insurance, and there are medical options now to deal with a lot of those pre-programmed diseases, and we can continue to live and have a satisfactory life. So genes and chromosomes. I guess if you wanted to blame somebody, your parents. but they probably didn't know either. Okay, number three. This is the one we have some control over, and it is karma. This is the moral aspect of why things happen. There's a cause and consequence of what we think, say, and do. And the consequence can be severe or minor or not at all. The thing I like about karma is that it doesn't care. And every time I thought about God, he, she, it cared. And if my life got worse because of that, it was because of him, her, or it. But when I think about karma, no eyes, no ears, no intention. It's just a natural law like gravity. And if you fall down and bring your fist and shake it at the sky and say, "Gravity, I hate you. Why did you do that to me?" Gravity has nothing to say. It's just, that's how it works. So as we get older, we start to realize that gravity is not our friend. And we make adjustments, and we compensate, and life goes on. But the thing karma allows us to do is to change the consequence if it hasn't happened yet. So we may just do something that's terrible, and we finally realize after the fact that we did something that was terrible, and now we tremble at the thought of the consequence coming towards us. But if it hasn't yet arrived, what we need to do is create enough good karma to balance the bad consequence that is about to happen. So you immediately give $100 to Red Cross. And then you look for old people to walk across the street. And then you want to bring some prepackaged food to the homeless. And you continue this as long as it takes until the time the consequence could occur is over. And you beat the consequence because the good karma was bigger than the bad consequence. Now, I love that idea because that means that I'm in charge of my life to a certain extent. I'm one of the contributing factors in my life. And I have to realize that, and I have to put it to good use to make my life better. So oftentimes, as we inch to New Year's, we make resolutions. I'm going to have a really good year this year. I'm going to eat right. I'm going to exercise right. I'm going to give half my money away. And I'm just going to be a really good person. In about February, we start looking at our failure to live up to that. And we go, wow, it's really hard to be a better person. And it usually doesn't come because you want to be. It becomes circumstances allow you to be better. And what we need to do is recognize the circumstances we find ourselves in and see the opportunity to be better in those circumstances. Now, I was just talking to my brother. He lives in Panama City, Florida. He moved there after the hurricane in North Carolina. So he got to Panama City just in time for the second hurricane. And thankfully, his apartment was still standing, but he had to go 2 states over to avoid the wind and the storm surge. So he was having a problem. He's 66 years old, and he was having a problem with drinking a lot of fluids and going to the bathroom a lot. And he said, you know what, I think I got diabetes. And he had had no symptoms before, so he went to the doctor. And the doctor did their tests, and as it turns out, he has diabetes. So the doctor says, well, we can beat this, but it's going to be up to you. Number one, you need to change your diet. You're 300 pounds. He's almost 300 pounds. So he's a lot overweight. He's 6'4". He could carry maybe 250, 240, but 300 is a bit much. You got to lose some weight. You got to stop drinking 30 beers a day. That's not good. Maybe 1 beer a day just to taste it, but no more than that. Then he says, you got to exercise. And I recommend you exercise 2 hours a day, 6 days a week. Now, my brother doesn't exercise. He has gym equipment, but he doesn't use it. So to change your whole lifestyle, food, exercise, reading labels at the grocery store to see what you're ingesting, and realizing that you'll never be able to eat half of what's in the grocery store again. Bummer. Plus, he has to do an injection. It's not insulin, it's something else and something new, and apparently it's self-contained, and you just hold it up to your stomach, and that's the biggest part of his body, so that's what he's using. And you push the little button, and it automatically injects it. He's got to do that once a week, 4 times a month. The price for that is $2,700. Tell me about it. He has wonderful insurance. He has Medicare, plus he was in the Coast Guard, so he's got a federal insurance program as well. And it's going to cost him like $50. So he saved a heck of a lot of money. And he said to me, as I'm talking to him on the phone, you Medicare? Yeah. Do you have Part D? Prescription? Yeah. He says, that's good. Because if you need to get a prescription, it can cost you an arm and a leg. And you have to decide whether you eat or do that injection. And I just heard a great quote yesterday as I was listening to the radio. In our golden years, we want to have enough money so we don't have to go to the Golden Arches. I love that. So start saving now, you know. Okay, so we have genetics. Now, my dad had diabetes, so genetically, my brother was sort of predisposed to go in that direction, and his lifestyle was conducive to diabetes. So he had no way to know it was coming. Well, he did, but he didn't see it. Karma, cause and consequence. You can apply that to my brother. What he ate and the cause that happened, the consequence. How he looked at food, how he looked at drinking beer. He likes beer. If he could have a sign, he would have a sign that says, I like beer. And I think Judge Kavanaugh would agree with him. That beer is good. And in Germany, they say beer is food. And I think that's probably the case. But now he has to be disciplined. Now he has to go in the direction of asceticism, which is what Buddhism is all about. Buddhism isn't about what we have, it's about what we got to get rid of. And that's the deal. He's got to get rid of all the stuff now in his life that prevents him from having a good life. He doesn't need to add anything. He needs to subtract a lot of things. So karma will allow us to be in control of our life to a certain extent. We will be a main contributing factor, and if we have good karma intention, speech, and action. Good karma, generosity, kindness, wisdom. Bad karma, greed, hatred, and delusion. We want good karma. And our mind leads our speech and action into the world. So we need to cultivate. We need to meditate. We need to understand how our mind works, what it thinks about, what desire causes it to do, what direction it pushes us in, and we need to be able to say, I'm not going in that direction, which is what my brother's faced with now, as he looks at, mashed potatoes, gravy, and butter. He'll never be able to eat that stuff again, or at least in moderation. Man. So, the universal cause and consequence, the genes and chromosomes, our karma. Number 4, the Dharma. The Dharma allows us to see how things manifest in our life, in the world. So there are the Four Noble Truths, the 7 factors of enlightenment, the Eightfold Path. All those things can give us a clue on what we need to avoid or what direction we need to go in. But they have a significant influence on what's going to happen to us if we're a practicing Buddhist. It's one of the 4 reasons stuff happens is because we are practicing the Dharma. Now, that should mean that it's one of the 4 reasons why good stuff happens to us, why personal growth happens to us. It allows us to be better than we would have been without the Dharma. So I think this is an important consideration as we study the Dharma. This is a path to being a better person, and for a Buddhist, being a better person means a person who suffers less. So we all want to suffer less, and the Dharma can help us do that. It's a strong contributing factor to our happiness and our goal of ultimate peace. Now, number 5, the reason stuff happens is our mind. We're always thinking about stuff. And that stuff isn't necessarily good to think about sometimes. And oftentimes I find as I get older, my mind just thinks about all the stuff I did wrong. I'm going, wow, my whole life, I've done everything wrong. Now, that's not the case realistically, but sometimes as we edit what we've done in our past, we don't see the glass as half full, we see it as half empty. And because we've already done it, there's no way to change it. But we can change the way it lives in us. We have that capability. So, how did my past affect my present moment? How does it live in me? Can I turn the discursive thought off for a while and give myself a break? Now, we have some older people living here, about my age, and I really enjoy watching them walk from the house to their car. And it might be, 50 yards, 60 yards, but rarely do they look around. They're just looking 3 feet in front of them and lost in thought about something. They don't notice the cats over there, or the flower that's blooming, or the tree that's giving us shade. It's just, they're stuck in their thoughts and they're just going. Okay. Well, can we turn it off for 50 yards and not think about anything? And we can if you practice meditation and mindfulness. And one of the ways to do it would be to count your footsteps. 1, 2, 3, 4, up to 10 and down to 1. 1, 2, 3, 4. And so rather than having, a lifelong series of thoughts happening from the house to the car, you have a single number. And that single number is attached to something that's happening right now. Your footstep hitting the ground. It brings you into the present moment experience of your life. You're not stuck in the past. You're not anticipating the future. You're simply feeling the ground with the number. 1, 2, 3, 4. Or you could do some chanting. Om Mani Padme Hum, Om Mani Padme Hum, and bless the walkway to your car. Then all living creatures in the sound of your voice is being blessed right now. You've become a bodhisattva from the house to the car. And you can do that in shopping malls or in Vaughn's Supermarket. Vaughn's Supermarket needs more bodhisattvas chanting Om Mani Padme Hum. So there are ways to deal with the mind. There are 4 things we can do. Number 1, we can abandon unskillful thoughts once they have arisen. Okay, so you have an unskillful thought. And you say, I don't want to think about that. It's not skillful. It doesn't have anything to do with the circumstance I find myself in. So we can abandon it and direct our thoughts in a different direction. We can prevent unskillful thoughts from arising. If you're aware that it's about to arise, you're on the bakery aisle, and there's that pumpkin pie, and it's on sale. You can prevent that unskillful thought from arising by looking at the yogurt counter, or maybe oatmeal, or some technique to break the train of thought. You can maintain skillful thoughts that are already there. That once you realize the thought is based in generosity and kindness and wisdom, you can hold on to it. Make it last as long as it can. We realize all thoughts are temporary, and they will go away and other thoughts will take their place. But we can encourage skillful thoughts to last just a little bit longer if we're aware that it is a skillful thought. And then finally, we can develop skillful thoughts that have not yet arisen. One of generosity. We can encourage that to arise, and we can use that to our advantage to make our life and the life of others better. So there's a lot of stuff we can do, and there's a lot of things we can blame, but we're never able to blame one thing. One is sort of a Jewish religious concept, and they apply that to God, the one God of the desert. The Buddha lived in a culture of many gods, a hierarchy of God. There wasn't simply one of anything. It was always a multitude of things that were interconnected and interdependent. And anytime something unhappy happens to us and we say, there's no one thing that I can blame, it lessens the suffering. It keeps it at a level that we can work with it and understand that because I'm on earth, because I'm genetically inclined, because I have karma, because I'm studying the Dharma, because I have a mind, this stuff happens. It's the human condition. Number one, we're really lucky to be born human because it gives us a chance to find the Dharma, practice the Dharma, and achieve nirvana. But it also works against us because we're just too darn smart for our own good. And we keep devising reasons why we are the victim and not the victor. So keep these 5 things in mind next time you feel like a victim. And it will allow you to come to a place of acceptance with the situation you find yourself in. Thank you for listening. Now, does anybody have any comments or questions about what I've said? Was everything clear? Okay. Yeah.
Could you explain the difference between cause and effect and karma?
Yes, I can. Only because I'm not wise. You see, if you're really wise, you have no answers at all. I haven't got there yet. So, karma is the cause. Vipaka, in Pali, early Buddhist language, canonical language, is the consequence. So karma is only one half of that model. Karma, vipaka, cause and consequence. But now we can use karma to avoid the consequence if we're skillful enough. Does that make sense? And the bumper sticker, what goes around comes around, that's not karma. That's just a really good bumper sticker. Thanks for the question. Jeannie, do you have...
I was thinking you were talking about the karma if you do good things and, you know, go feed the homeless, whatever, then your karma will be improved. But you can make the action but not really feel it. You can be doing it to get the karma. You know, like, I'm going to do this so it'll be better for me. So that kind of cancels out the good karma, don't you think?
Well, that's a businessman's karma. That if I do this, I'll get a reward. And it works to a certain extent, but it doesn't work as well as if you do it selflessly, without anticipating any kind of positive consequence. Then your karma is better, not worse. But it's still good to do it because you expect good things to happen. That's fine. That's where we all start. To get to that selfless place, it takes a long time.
And just one more, like the monks in Tibet and places like that that are very devoted to a spiritual life but yet are killed, or, you know, the terrible things that has happened. How can you explain that? They didn't do anything bad, you know?
Well, one of the things is where they live, geography,
Yeah.
you know, and then the genes and chromosomes that sort of put them there, you know, because their parents live there, they live there now. So, you know, using the 5 niyamas, the 5 reasons stuff happens, we can then apply those 5 things to Tibet or to Sri Lanka or to Koreatown. And that's why things are happening.
So they're called the 5 niyamas?
Uh-huh. I think it's spelled Niyama, niyama. And if you do Google search, you'll find a lot of really good people talking about it.
Okay.
So, good, thanks.
Pali word?
What's that? It is a Pali word. It's found in the canonical texts of early Buddhism, niyama. And when I found it the first time, I thought, this is perfect. This really allows me to work with a lot of stuff in my life, you know, and not have to feel like a victim. You know, so when my car got broken into back in the 70s and they stole my cassette radio, man, you know, I really did feel like a victim. But then I realized my car was just in the wrong place at the wrong time. You know? And somebody wanted the radio more than I did. So there you go.
And one more thing, like lately, a little bit more this has happened, is, you know, we hear so much in the news that you're sitting in a temple or a church, someone comes in and shoots everybody. And so I naturally have more fear now, and they come across my screen quite frequently, you know, and I think is it because of the times or because I'm just getting worse, you know, in terms of fear and in terms of fears.
Mm-hmm.
And so I guess I have to practice about getting rid of that, but it seems that it's much harder.
Well, you know, there have been times in the evolution of, you know, our planet and our country where things are really bad and then they get better and then they get really bad. And I think we're at a disadvantage because we have too much information. You know, we have, people taking videos everywhere on their cell phone. And we're just more aware of what's going on. And I don't think it's any worse than it ever has been. It's just our awareness is there. Now, let me talk about fear. Fear is good. Fear allows us to not be part of a lot of catastrophes, or at least minimize our participation in a catastrophe. And you look at that, people going in and shooting people. Well, a lot has to do with the mind in that case, because they're, PTSD, or they're just insane, or they want to kill people because it makes them feel good. And so you can apply those 5 niyamas to those situations and go, yeah, okay. Now the thing is, how do you avoid that? How do you stop it in the future? And I don't think anybody's figured that out yet. We've had mass murders for a long time. We seem to have more now than we ever have had. And I don't know how to even start figuring out how to end that, or homelessness. How do you end that? So there are a lot of things that we sort of have to work in a way that allows us as a Buddhist to feel useful, that our job is not to save the world, our job is to end suffering. So if there is anybody suffering out there, and the feeling I have is that everybody is suffering, then there's much work for us to do. And it takes a certain level of courage to go into sort of, neutral situations and end the suffering. Now, the first responders are just amazing folks because they run into the situation that we're running away from. Because we have fear. They have fear as well, but what allows them to transcend their fear, I think, is service and duty to the community. So we may look at a way of transcending our fear as service and duty to Buddhism. How can we be useful in ending suffering in the world? And I think with some practice, it lessens our fear. I don't think it ever goes away completely, but I don't think it's supposed to. I think it's healthy to have a little bit of fear, especially on the 405. Thank you, Jimmy. Yeah, Hideki.
Well, I think that the elemental problem is overpopulation.
Yeah.
So if you didn't have as many people, you wouldn't have all these things happening.
Yeah.
Which means population control or some sort of...
Spay and neuter, Hideki. Spay and neuter humans. Just line them up. And I was thinking about that too the other day, Hideki, that why is that the case? Why do we have so many people, and they're bringing their children into a world that may not be able to sustain them, support them. And then it finally, after 69 years on this earth, it finally dawned on me. We have 2 extreme forces that are working against us in population control. Number 1 is our desire. We find the object of our desire. He or she just melts our heart and mind. And we become blind and deaf in their presence. But we're also being pushed from behind by the universal need to create. That the universe will not let us not create. We can't go, I'm not going to create anymore. Because the universe will make it really difficult for us. All things will become objects of desire if we go against the universe. So we've got somebody pushing our back, we've got somebody pulling us towards them. So how do you get out of that? How do you avoid that? And we just had one of our residents leave yesterday, and he was married and divorced. He had a son. His son just graduated from college, and he is now going to go out and live a life that he's wanted. His obligations have been met. The universe is happy. He left one behind. And so now he's going to go, and he's not sure, maybe Central South America, which I thought was ironic, seeing as they're all coming up here. He's going to go down there, and he's going to live a life that he's always wanted to live. So there seems to be an obligation to nature to procreate. It seems to be genetically hardwired into us to go out and have some kids. And until we're able to change that, to short circuit that, to make it less desirable, you know, I don't know what we're going to do. Back in the 60s, in India, there was a story of people wanting to control the population, and they would wait on train stations, and hand out transistor radios to men who got a vasectomy. You know, and so they had some radios left over. Not everybody was into getting a vasectomy. But I thought it was an interesting idea. Yeah, you know, give them something they can listen to instead of something to do. So, I don't know, if you come up with something, you'll make a lot of money. Maybe chastity belt, you know. But that wouldn't work either, because somebody would have the key. So, I don't know. Yes?
So I think earlier someone asked a question about, like, I think you described it as universal cause and effect.
Yes.
And then us doing karma to sort of try to neutralize the effect on us from that universal cause and effect?
No. We have karma,
right,
and we create things, and if the consequence hasn't happened yet, we can use our karma to dilute the consequence, to reduce its effects on us. Not the universal stuff, but
what we've done.
But what we've created,
I see.
we have a chance not to feel it.
I see.
And I like that. It gives us a certain amount of freedom.
And so what the universal cause and effect, we really have no...
We are pawns in the game. When it comes to an earthquake or tsunami, nothing we can do. But we don't have to blame anybody or anything. We just have to realize that's just the nature of living on this planet. You know, it's not good, it's not bad. It's just a bunch of water, you know. Thank you. Dan.
Well, no, I was going to say, you say we can, if that thing hasn't happened yet.
Right.
What's the lead time on that?
Well, there you go. It varies. Yeah, okay, so say you say something really unkind to your wife, you know, and you know there's going to be repercussions, but your wife hasn't come back at you yet, and then you take her out to dinner, and that just sort of lessens all the... But lead time varies. There's too many attributes to really say.
I'm saying, yeah, it's hard to determine if you're looking at something in the past. You go, what would the effect be? How would I know if it has or hasn't happened? How can I attribute what's happening now that's not good to something? You know, it's hard to identify.
It is. It is. Let's look at it in a practical way. It's time for you to buy car insurance, but you're a little light in the pocketbook, and you say, well, I'll just postpone that for a month. And so there you are, and you're hoping nothing's going to happen in that month. But now you're into about 17 days, and you say, well, you know what? I got enough now for car insurance. So any kind of negative consequence that would have happened with not having car insurance, you were able to prevent that from happening by getting car insurance. Okay, so it's that kind of thing. We often don't know what the consequence is going to be or how long it's going to take. But we can work some things out in our mind and say, okay, yeah, you know, the wife thing, the dinner thing, the car insurance thing. And it just allows us to participate in a really skillful way in our life, which I think is really nice, because a lot of times we feel that we have no control at all. And yet, according to karma, we have a lot of control. That's what I'd say, Dan.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Isn't there a danger you get neurotic about this? So, like, for example, if I'm drinking and driving, run over a child, doesn't die, you know, maybe the child is just crippled or something, and I decide, definitely some bad consequences coming my way. You know, who knows what the lead time is, but you know, something's coming. And so now I spend the rest of my life, fretting over, let me donate extra money to this temple. Let me help every old lady. Let me develop an app to help old ladies cross the street. I go kind of crazy trying to avoid any kind of consequences that are going to come my way for having crippled a child. Like how do I know when to stop, or how do I know when I've mitigated as much as I possibly could on something that I don't know what the consequence is going to be in the first place. So.
Yeah, but all those things you just talked about sound wonderful. You're helping everybody, even if you're neurotic over it. So I think the idea is don't stop. Create some more apps. Help some more people. And we don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. Some of us think we do. But if you're doing good things right now because of something negative that has happened, I don't see anything wrong with that from a Buddhist perspective. That's if that's the reason it came out of such a terrible situation, then in every situation we can find the good.
Even if my intentions are not.
Well, do we always know what our intentions are, and do our intentions really, help or hinder? We might have the intention to go and save a bird that's just been caught by the cat. And you go, and you do your best and it dies. And you just feel so bad. But that intention was not realistic. That was an intention of compassion and kindness that you applied to something that was going to die anyway. And so we don't know. Let me tell you a story that I told a couple of weeks ago. And it's by Ajahn Chah. He was a forest monk in Thailand. And it's talk about the glass is already broken. Okay, and so what happened is one of his students gave him a glass to drink water from. And it was a beautiful glass, and it was crystal. And he would hit the rim with his fingernail, it would make a wonderful tone. But he realized that the glass was already broken, because one day his elbow might knock the glass off the table and it would shatter in 2,000 pieces. Or maybe the wind would rise and blow the glass off onto the floor and it would shatter into 1,000,000 pieces. But until that happened, he could appreciate that glass for what it was, and even more, because he realized it was already broken. So can we look at our life as being already broken? But the consequences haven't materialized yet. So every day is the best day we're ever going to have, because our life is already broken. There you go. Okay, well, I think we have come to that time where we have to all go home. Except for me, I go upstairs.